The smell of fresh-cut grass is supposed to calm a man down. You know, that clean, green, Sunday morning kind of peace, but the day my hedges hit the ground, it smelled like betrayal. Like diesel fumes and shredded leaves, and something inside me snapping. And if you've ever stood there watching two strangers erase 20 years of your quiet with gas-powered trimmers, while your neighbor smiles like she just won a county fair ribbon, yeah, you know that feeling sticks. For 20 years, those hedges stood taller than me, 10 feet of green privacy, thick and patient and alive. They weren't just shrubs. They were routine. They were insulation from the world. They were the reason I could drink coffee in my pajamas without worrying who was judging my lawn chair placement. And across the street lived Brenda Carmichael, president of the Cypress Creek HOA, self-appointed guardian of aesthetic purity, and proud mother of the neighborhood's most aggressively pampered rose garden. Now Brenda loved rules the way some people love their grandchildren. She quoted them, framed them, probably whispered them goodnight. And somewhere in the dusty Covenant archives was a clause, Section 4B, Article 3, stating greenery couldn't exceed 7 feet. Mine were 10. And apparently, that extra 3 feet was a crime against her crimson glory roses. First came the polite little note under my windshield wiper. No signature, but the crisp linen paper and dramatic cursive might as well have screamed her name. Then came the certified letter. $50 a day until compliance. I trimmed a foot, then another. 8 feet tall, still healthy, still dignified. I thought that was compromise. I was wrong. The morning they came, it wasn't quiet. It was war. Gas engines roared. Branches cracked. I looked out the window and saw two landscapers hacking into my hedge like it had insulted their mothers. Not trimming, annihilating. Whole sections collapsing. Leaves flying. And there she was, Brenda, arms crossed on the sidewalk, supervising like a monarch overseeing an execution. I ran outside barefoot, yelling, "What the hell are you doing?" "HOA directive, sir," one guy said, not even meeting my eyes. Directive, like my yard was a military zone. Within minutes, my living wall, 20 years of growth, was reduced to 2-foot stumps. The sun poured straight into my living room, harsh and invasive. My house felt naked, exposed. Brenda didn't even look at me when they finished. She just turned and watered her roses like she'd just adjusted the thermostat. I stood there staring at those jagged stumps, smelling torn wood and fuel, and something in me shifted. I'm a librarian. I catalog books. I don't wage wars. But that wasn't enforcement. That was humiliation. And humiliation has a funny way of clarifying things. That night, instead of reading first editions, I read zoning laws, city ordinances, structural codes. I learned about setbacks and masonry classifications and the beautiful technical difference between a fence and a wall. Fences had HOA limits. Masonry walls? That fell under city code. 8 feet allowed. No permit required under specific conditions. Brenda wanted uniform landscaping? Fine. I'd give her something uniform. Gray. Solid. Permanent. The next morning, trucks rolled into Cypress Creek like an invading army. Flatbeds stacked with cinder blocks, pallets of concrete mix, rebar bundled like steel bones. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Mr. Jenkins froze mid-bacon flip. Mrs. Henderson waved nervously. Across the street, Brenda stepped outside, confusion turning to horror as she watched hundreds of blocks line my former hedge line. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. "A wall," I said, stacking blocks calmly. "Since my hedges were executed. You can't build that." "Which covenant prohibits masonry walls, Brenda?" Her face flushed red. She knew the bylaws backward, but she hadn't anticipated this. I'd done my homework. And then came the twist. She didn't attack the wall directly. She went bigger, dirtier. A cease and desist from the city landed in my mailbox a week later. Complaint filed. Allegations of unsafe foundation. Missing rebar inspections. Potential demolition. My stomach dropped. HOA was petty. City government? That's machinery. Brenda had escalated. For a day, I almost folded. Engineering reviews, fines, possible teardown. It was designed to exhaust me financially. That's how power works sometimes. Not loud, just suffocating. But I remembered something. I had documented everything. Every batch of concrete, every rebar placement. I kept the empty bags in my garage, batch numbers, manufacturer specs. I'd taken progress photos out of habit. Librarian instincts. Catalog everything. I spent the night organizing evidence like I was preparing for trial. When the city inspector arrived, Mr. Harrison, unimpressed by life in general, Brenda was across the street pretending to water roses while practically vibrating with anticipation. He asked for permits. I gave him documentation. Code sections highlighted. Photos of the foundation depth. Visible rebar. Receipts. Batch numbers. He examined the wall, tapped the blocks, even inserted a depth gauge into a small exposed section I'd carefully photographed. Brenda finally couldn't contain herself. Is he in violation or not? That thing is unsafe. Mr. Harrison turned to her slowly. Ma'am, this structure appears compliant. Filing exaggerated complaints wastes city resources. Her mouth opened, closed, and just like that, her trap snapped shut on herself. The wall stood. And here's the part one didn't expect, the real twist. Neighbors started dropping by. Lemonade, cookies, quiet thank yous. Turns out, Brenda had bullied more than just me. I'd just been the first one stubborn enough to push back publicly. At the next HOA meeting, packed for once, Mrs. Gable and Mr. Davies, the board members who used to rubber stamp everything Brenda said, requested a vote of confidence. Whispers turned into murmurs. Murmurs turned into ballots. Brenda Carmichael, queen of aesthetic compliance, lost her presidency by 7 votes. 7. The same number of feet she demanded my hedges be trimmed to. Karma has a sense of humor. Now the wall stands 8 feet tall, smooth and unmovable. Brenda's roses? They get partial shade in the morning. Not enough to kill them, just enough to humble them. And here's what I learned. Not from the wall, not from the fight, but from the feeling after it was over. Privacy isn't just about sightlines. It's about dignity and power. When left unchecked in small places, grows just as invasive as any hedge ever could. The moment someone uses rules as a weapon instead of framework, they stop protecting community. They start controlling it. I didn't build that wall out of revenge. Well, maybe a little. But mostly, I built it because surrender teaches bullies they were right. And sometimes the quietest person on the street is just waiting for the right reason to stop being quiet. So now I sit on my porch behind 8 feet of cinder block, drinking coffee in peace again. The sun filters differently, softer. The neighborhood feels balanced. Brenda still lives across the street. We nod occasionally. Civil, distant. She doesn't quote bylaws anymore. And every time I run my hand across that cool concrete, I remember the sound of those trimmers. And I remember the day I decided enough was enough. So here's my question for you. When rules are technically legal, but morally rotten, where do you draw the line? Do you comply and keep the peace? Or do you build your wall and risk the war? Tell me what you'd have done. I'm genuinely curious. Because trust me, sometimes the hedge isn't the problem. Sometimes it's the person holding the shears.